Can begin.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining our discussion tonight. A very warm welcome to everyone present, and special thanks to our discussant for today, Grishma SG, and filmmakers Santosh and Satish Babusenan, who are also here with us today. Talking Films Online, or TFO in short, is an informal coming together of academics, students, researchers, filmmakers, and cinephiles interested in cinema, and more importantly, interested in talking and writing about cinema. The online group came together quite spontaneously during the pandemic and lockdown in June 2020. Dr. Geeta Vishwanath from Baroda and Dr. Nikhila from Hyderabad have been coordinating the activities of TFO since its inception. People like Sanjay Kumar, Sridhar Modugu, K. Faniraj, Ajanta Sirkar, Murli Krishna, Tarakeshwar VB, Yajnashri, Rasha, Madhurima, Vijay Kumar Boratti, and many others join the weekly discussion and enhance its quality. So far, TFO has organized 229 weekly online discussions. In fact, this is the 230th one. And these weekly discussions revolve around a pre decided film. Besides this, TFO has also organized a few month long film festivals and discussions. For instance, last September, TFO had organized a Kannada movie month where filmmakers Prithvi Konanur and Srinidhi Bengaluru and screenplay writer Anantha Chandreya joined the discussion. Filmmakers often make available their films exclusively for TFO members to watch by generously sharing links to their film. And we've had both first time filmmakers such as Bani Singh and Kling Johnson, as well as well known auteurs such as Deepa Dhanaraj, Jayant Cherian, Girish Kasaravalli, Adur Gopalakrishnan, Aparna Sen, Anjali Montero, and KP Jayashankar, among others, join the discussion of their respective films. During June every year, to mark its anniversary, TFO organizes the Smartphone Short Film Competition for students between 18 and 25 years of age, and the winners are given prizes. In fact, entries to the fifth annual Smartphone Short Film Competition are now open, and the last day for submission is May 15th, 2025. TFO also organized its first in person seminar on September 30th and October 1st last year in collaboration with the Forum on Contemporary Theory, Baroda. This international seminar was titled Indian Cinema in the Digital Era Continuities and Discontinuities. The aim of TFO is to get a conversation going around cinema and to get as many people involved in the process as possible. With the weekly events being online, anyone and everyone interested in cinema is welcome to TFO. TFO also has a WordPress blog where all kinds of writing on cinema is encouraged. TFO's YouTube channel is called Talking Films Online, where you can watch some of the weekly discussions. TFO has a private group on Facebook, and there is also a WhatsApp group where the posters with the film links for discussion and Zoom links are posted. For this week's discussion, the film in question is the Malayalam film IRUTT, suggested by VK Cherian. We thank VK Cherian for the suggestion and the filmmakers Satish Babusenan and Santosh Babusenan for generously sharing the link to the film. In fact, the Babusenan brothers are here with us for the discussion today. Satish and Santosh Babusenan are Satish and Santosh Babusenan are independent filmmakers from India, known for their deeply introspective and philosophically rich cinema. Across 10 feature films, they have explored themes of artistic integrity, memory, and the human search for meaning, often drawing inspiration from literature, mythology, and philosophy. Their films, marked by a slow, meditative style, challenge conventional storytelling and invite audiences into a world of quiet contemplation. Their work bridges Indian philosophical thought with a universal cinematic language. Santosh holds a PhD in film studies from the University of Kerala, and Satish is a Master's of Design in Visual Communication from IIT Bombay. The discussion on the film today will be initiated by Grishma SG. Grishma SG is a research scholar at the Department of English, Banaras Hindu University, Uttar Pradesh, India. Her research interests include cultural studies, popular history, and gender studies. She did her MA in English from University of Hyderabad and has presented papers in various national and international conferences, including the European Conference on South Asian Studies. Her latest article on royal women's autobiographical self-fashioning, in the Indian princely states has been published in South Asia Journal of South Asian Studies by Rutledge. So let's get started with our discussion. The floor is now yours, Grishma.
Hello, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank TFO and especially Nikhila ma'am and Geeta ma'am for giving me this opportunity to discuss the film Editor. It's so wonderful to have the directors of the movie here, and I'm really looking forward to hear more about the film from them. So I would like to start by sharing my screen. Is it visible?
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, I will start with a brief introduction to the film. The Malayalam movie Iruttu, directed by the Babusenan brothers and released in 2019, is a powerful political film. It foregrounds a larger socio-political crisis through the story of an individual. The protagonist is a retired professor named Ramdas who writes and speaks against the rising intolerance and undemocratic trends in the country. The film is mostly set in Thiruvananthapuram in Kerala, but it discusses a lot of issues of national importance. The plot revolves around the arrival of Nilima, a researcher from JNU who is writing a book on certain contemporary liberal thinkers, including the professor. So, through his conversations with Nilima, we get insight into the core issues that the professor and the film itself attempts to address. The film also transcends the political to delve deeper into personal and spiritual realms. So I would like to focus here a bit on the title of the film. As you can see in the slide, the title scene of the film shows Professor Ramdas with his mouth covered with a cloth, which itself clearly gives an indication of what the film would be about. Iruttu means darkness in Malayalam. So while watching the film, I felt that darkness has various connotations in the narrative. Primarily, as also indicated by the title scene, darkness signifies lack of freedom, especially of speech and expression. It depicts the dark times we are in, where the individual's freedom is under threat, and the seemingly simple act of exercising one's freedom of expression could even cause their death. So, besides this darkness at the political level, there is also another connotation of darkness at a personal level. In fact, in one of the scenes, Ramdas refers to it while talking about his past beloved Naina. He says, "She only saw the darkness inside me, my loneliness." Loneliness is a pervading theme in the film. Ramdas, despite his numerous acquaintances and engagements, is shown to be alone most of the times. Visually, also, darkness is a presence in the film throughout. There are a couple of scenes where Ramdas is sitting or lying down in his dark drawing room with a melancholic expression. The strained relationship with his son adds to his dejection. In a scene, he even asks his friend, "Do you think that a person can be utterly alone in this universe? We are all equal here, equal but alone." So I feel that the film puts forward a message that beyond everything, a human being longs for love, and compassion is the only thing that can alleviate this darkness. Uh, Through a handful of characters, the film presents a microcosm of the contemporary times. It directly confronts some significant issues. On the political front, it explicitly shows how the rise of Hindu nationalism and religious intolerance have had deeper impact on the fabric of democracy. Ramdas receiving the threat call is a powerful scene that lays bare the infringement upon citizens' freedom, how one is dictated on what to eat, speak, or write. Of course, the last scene depicting how dissenting voices are silenced is of particular relevance here. Furthermore, the film also draws our attention to various societal problems. Through Professor Ramdas's childhood story of being discriminated against on the basis of caste, it shows how our social system has some rotten issues at its core. Moral policing and invading other people's privacy is also talked about. Though briefly in the form of news bulletins, Shabarimala issues is also mentioned. Shabarimala is a temple in Kerala where women of menstrual age were denied entry earlier. A Supreme Court verdict in 2018 allowed women's entry into the temple. This was followed by violent protests across the state, where Congress and the right wing groups opposed women's entry, and the ruling left government supported it. So scholars have pointed out how the Shabarimala issue brought to light the functioning of upper caste heteropatriarchy in the state. So, in its depiction of the issues like moral policing and Shabarimala women's entry protests, the film gives a subtle criticism of the Kerala society too. Furthermore, the film also focuses on individual and familial relationships. Uh, at the core of the film is what I felt a critique of the state and its mechanisms. The nation states and its sustenance of hegemonic structures of power are placed in contrast with the democratic principles the system is supposed to uphold. I would like to focus on three interactions in the films that highlight these aspects. One is the visit from the official from the National Investigation Agency. So, in the beginning of his conversation with Professor Ramdas, the official claims that our responsibility is to protect the rights and dignity of the citizens. But after some time, he also says to Ramdas that we are keenly watching what you are writing and saying, and ends the conversation with a threat to the professor to stop speaking and writing against the nation. So the contradiction in these claims is self-evidence. The representative of the state who claims to protect the rights of the citizen himself is threatening a citizen to stop speaking and writing what he is doing. So in fact, it depicts the system of surveillance through which the state censors and silences its critics. The scene also raises the question of whose government it is and flags up the failure of the government system to be inclusive of the marginalized. This note is continued into the second interaction, the one between Ramdas and Minister Podwal. We are told that Podwal was a comrade but shifted his political affiliation and is a central minister now. So, what is noticeable in Podwal's arguments in support of his current political ideology is how it is quite similar to the claims made by the NIA inspector and the goon who threatens Ramdas via phone call. Podwal also asks Ramdas to stop criticizing the central government. He argues how his party is striving to restore glory to the nation and says it is imperative for the government to employ force in certain cases for the greater good. So the scene brings in the irony of a representative of parliamentary democracy, justifying the employment of brutal force against people in the interest of the nation. The film also briefly but brilliantly shows the other end of using force against people in a scene where a person talks about his son-in-law's death in police custody in Kerala. He points out how the investigation has reached nowhere, though the culprit is known. Besides the crime that happened, the victim is denied justice since the system itself is protecting the perpetrators. Coming back to the conversation between Ramdas and the minister, the same narrative of restoring the lost glory of the nation comes up in the thread call the professor receives. The extremist who calls Ramdas kind of sketches out who this glorious ideal nation belongs to. That is, the ones who accept their directives on language, political ideology, and even food choice. The call again ends with an explicit threat on Ramdas's life. So I feel like these three sets of conversations kind of sum up the disturbing traits and the dominant arguments of the right wing groups. Um, while thus skillfully capturing the contemporary socio-political scenario, the film's narrative also raises some profound philosophical concepts and existential dilemmas, especially through the protagonist. Ramdas comes across as a friendly and compassionate person to others, but his interaction with his son are uneasy and strained. It does tell Nilima that his previous relationship with a young colleague was the reason for the rift with his son. However, while watching the film, I felt that there is a deeper tension in the father son relationship. Similarly, the interiority of the protagonist is unraveled, revealing the feeling of emptiness beneath. There is a scene where Ramdas, in a sarcastic tone, says, Ramdas is happy. His words and tone convey a feeling of loneliness and sorrow. So I was wondering if it is an indication of the man's preoccupation with the external world, and he forgets to turn his gaze inward, both into his family and into himself. Another intriguing aspect I found is the figure of Buddha that comes up in many of the shots, as is seen in the slide, including a close-up shot. Also, the name of the professor's house is Lumpini. I was thinking if it has some greater symbolic significance, given that Buddha is one who achieved enlightenment and could see through the darkness that surrounds human life. So it would be great to hear the director's take on this. Similarly, there are verses of Kabir and Tagore that are brilliantly placed within the narrative. These verses convey the message that humanity and compassion are far more important than blind faith and hatred in the name of national glory. So, in a way, the film itself provides certain answers to the issues that it brings to our attention. And the film actually ends with a chilling climax that depicts Ramdas being shot on his way to address a public gathering in Wayanad. It can be noticed that the incident happens in broad daylight by the side of a busy road in Kerala. It was particularly interesting to see how the film ironically presents the crime at a place where the professor was confident that would not happen. There are multiple instances in the film where Ramdas confidently says that they cannot harm him in Kerala. In that sense, the film also problematizes the narrative of exceptionalism of Kerala in the contemporary political scenario. Personally, as a Malayali currently residing in Uttar Pradesh, this is something that I have also thought about many a times. I would really like to hear the director's perspective on this and the choosing of Kerala as the setting of the film. Mm. The film ends by showing the martyrs column in Thiruvananthapuram with the voiceover of a young Ramdas reciting Tagore's Heaven of Freedom. It is closely connected to the larger theme of the film, the poet's vision of his countrymen enjoying freedom and harmony is starkly in contrast to the scenario that the film depicts. The image of the martyrs column is of particular significance here. While it was built in the memory of freedom fighters, the true freedom they fought for is still beyond the reach of their people. The struggle for freedom has not ended. It still continues with new martyrs like Ramdas losing their life for the same. The fact that such murders have actually happened in real is what brings forth the extent of darkness that the film talks about. I would like to end this presentation by also pointing out how the journey of the film substantiates its theme. IRUTT was refused the Central Board of Film Certification over a few words that they deemed quote unquote unacceptable. Censorship has been a major issue with regard to Indian films. While cinema is not state controlled in India, scholars like Tejaswini Gandhi have pointed out how it has been an object of governmental regulation since the colonial period through censorship, taxation, allocation of raw materials, and control over exhibition through the licensing of theaters. This has been reflected in the film industries that often show a submission to the ideological presuppositions of the ruling governments. We know how the emergency times witnessed a censorship of various political content in film and media. In the current situation, also, cinematic and creative explorations are increasingly facing censorship and calls for ban. In such a context, IRUTT shows how crucial it is to have independent cinematic practices that can be critical of the power structure. While my knowledge of it is limited to my position as a spectator, it would be great to know about our director's view on the censorship issue and its larger context, given that this is their second film after the 2015 film Chayam Pushe Veera that was refused censor certificate. So, with this, I would like to conclude my presentation. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Grishma, for that. I think you laid out, with a lot of clarity, some very important things that are raised by the film, whether it is, I mean, the central concern, how it is critiquing state machinery and lack of freedom of speech and expression, and how it is dwelling, how you kind of spent time on the many meanings of the title, the darkness, and how it is shown visually, um, you know and how, while the film is speaking of issues of national significance, it is transcending the political and also focusing on the personal. Thank you so much, especially for drawing the association also with the figures of the Buddha and, the martyrs column. I'm sure we are all eagerly waiting to listen to what Satish Babu Senan and Santosh Babu Senan have to say. So let's see. Would you like to respond first, or would you like to take more comments?
We could listen to comments.
Okay, sure. Why not? Anyone else would like? Yes, I think. Okay, we'll take comments then. Anyone else who wants to comment right now?
Pradnya, if I may.
Yes, please.
Yeah. Thank you, Satish and Santosh and VK Cherian sir for putting us in touch with Satish and Santosh and for making this possible. I think I had watched this film online when we had this film festival online during the pandemic. I think there was a slot in which I had watched this film. So some part of it I did remember from my earlier viewing. But certainly, as Grishma was saying, I would be interested in knowing, how that came about and, like without the censor certificate, were you able to show it online and so on? My response to the film is about three aspects. One is the figure of the female journalist. Grishma didn't focus much on this figure. I have recently written a chapter on the female journalist in Kannada cinema as a kind of narrative figure who enables the narrative. So in some ways, we know the professor's past through this figure. He's recounting his past to her. So there is a sense of her as an interlocutor in the film through which we get to see the life that he has led, including his own probably till then not articulated perception of what happened with his colleague. So it is at that point in time probably that we get to see his view as a kind of explanation as to why the relation with his son is strained. So I was thinking a little bit about how this figure of the female journalist is so ubiquitous in cinema in the 2000s, which I found very, very interesting. I mean, as a narrative device, Of course, she's fulfilling her function as a journalist by kind of putting together a story, but it's also a way of collecting information, gathering information, and relaying information to the viewer. So I thought this is one more instance of what I had noticed when I was writing my paper. The second aspect, which I thought was very intriguing, was had to do with the way, I mean, the father son, the tension between the father and son, which to some extent reminded me of Kasaravalli's Kurmavatara, a son who wants the father's money. But is morally, I mean, judgmental and highly moralistic about his, about his private relationships, intimate relationships, and so on. So it kind of had echoes of that. And thirdly, about the way in which, caste, I don't know, it's like blink and miss. It just comes right at the end when we see him in the flashback sequence when we are told that he goes to his neighboring house, and then when they ask him to go to the backyard, that's when, so there is a rationale for his rebellion in the form of, or not rebellion, what has constituted his subject as a professor who is now taking on. So it comes from a certain kind of political consciousness, but also a certain kind of social consciousness of who he is, where he is, how he has been treated, and so on. But it's not foregrounded, but it's certainly there in the last sequence. Yeah, so these were some of the points that I noticed in the film. It had echoes of Kalburgi and all those killings that Gauri, Lankesh, and all the killings that we have witnessed in recent times. Somewhat more directly. I suppose I'll stop at this point. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else who would like to go next? I think maybe I can just say what is on my mind till, get somebody else to respond. So I think I was also very, intrigued by what Grishma said, this whole positioning of Kerala. I mean, it does come in, right? Where Professor Ramdas is saying it's not possible in Kerala, but then it happens. So I was also wondering, what. Um I mean, that's something that I also noticed, and I would like to understand that more. That is one thing. And the second thing, I mean, just visually, there is one shot I noticed. Maybe you could correct me if I haven't understood it right. But I think there is this one scene that really stands out for me, which is where Professor Ramdas is feeding the fish just as he's going to go to Wayanad, right? To me, that seemed like a very different kind of scene from the rest of the film, where the camera is focusing on just the fish and the food. And as the fish reach for the food, we see Professor Ramdas going on to Vainar and then, finally getting shot. So to me, that was a very interesting I mean, I just noticed that. I don't know if anyone else also noticed it. It just kind of felt like the fish is reaching for a bait, although it's not bait, it's food. But I just my mind made that connection, so I thought I should just mention it. I think there's one more question from David Rees. I could not work out why the professor's love story meant that his son hated him. Does this make any sense at all? That is a question that has come in the chat. Uh, yeah. Would anyone like to respond to that question that David Rees has?
May I respond?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, this question of professor's love story actually comes up as a signaling of the moral policing and the invading of privacy that we see around. So, professor was a widower, and then he fell in love with his young colleague. But somebody had filmed their private moments, and by the time they reached the college, it was posted all over social media and propagated, like spread among the students. So his son is not somebody like in that sense. Professor son is exactly opposite of like the liberal thinker that he is. So he takes a conservative stance and he just takes away his family and his child from there and he starts living apart from the professor and he from then on he tries to maintain a distance with the professor. So I think that is something that, tells a lot about our society, about how they view people's personal relationships and how judgmental people can be, even about, a person very close to oneself. So that's what I thought about the issue.
So Grishma is saying that it's probably just a mirror of our, tendency to moralize and things like that, right? Okay. Anyone else has anything? Oh, do you want to say something, Mr. Santosh? Please go ahead. We can't hear you. I think the mic is off.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah, yes, we can
Yeah,
hear you
yeah.
now.
I think Grishma is spot on because Kerala, in spite of all the literacy and all the liberal thought in politics and all that, socially we have a lot of problems with personal morality and things like that. Like she was rightly saying
Right.
about the moral policing and all that. It's a major problem here actually, although it's on the wane, but we still have these things. So that is exactly what we were trying to show there, and she was pointing to it rightly.
Okay. I think Satish Babusenan also wanted to say something. Yes, Mr. Satish.
At that point, all I wanted to say was to Santosh that his mic is off.
Right.
But I could add to this point, which is
Yes, please.
We've used
grades नहीं भेजी after third trimester.
Just 1 second.
I trusted her.
Yeah, I think you can continue now. Yes, you wanted to add something?
Yeah. That is, you see, hope is something, which usually takes us forward. In fact, we have made a film called Anand Mona Lisa Waits for Death, in which we treat the subject of hope. I'll come to why I'm saying this shortly. And hope is treated as something really big, something to aspire for and all that. But in that film, we try to break that structure.
Okay.
However, here, Ramdas lives in the hope that he can be the better person that he hopes that he is. So there are two issues there. One is he speaks about compassion. So he hopes to be a person who is compassionate. Thus the fish, as Pratnya, you were wondering about the fish.
Right.
The fish are things that cannot give us anything in return. Like in all our human interactions, there's always a give and take. But the fish can give us nothing. It can only take food and then just be there. But he does that out of compassion. He is practicing compassion and he hopes to be a better human being because of that practice. Now, his son, the relationship with his son, which is what I think Rees was pointing out, relationship with his son, he hopes that his son would turn out to be a better human being than he himself was at that point of time when the child was born. So he named him Kabir because he believes that Kabir was compassionate. He says after the drunken scene that that man understood compassion. So he hoped that his son would also be a Kabir. And like Grishma pointed out, the son turns out to be just the opposite. These were the
Yeah.
two things that we wanted to work out there.
Okay. Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for that response. It, it puts that into perspective for us. Anyone else would like to go now with their response, questions, comments?
Can I come in?
Yes, please, sir.
Okay. Yeah, I'm Syrian. I recommend the film for the simple reason that the brothers are, I feel they are the most contemporary uh, filmmakers in the sense that they in the film they have observed the contemporary reality or the social psychology psychic reality of Kerala. Because I'm a Delhiite for the last 40 years. I keep hearing things. And I began to notice them when I saw by accident their one of the first films, early films, um, The Narrow Path or Tayal Pada. And I was shocked the way they handled the caste factor, which is not generally in Malayalam films. And in this film also, I think very few Indian films have capsuled the entire uh, social and political things happening around us the way they have done it in this film. And especially for Kerala. Grishma said that killing of professor was, is something new to Kerala. But Kerala is getting used to very many new things in that space itself. So whether it is victory of a BJP candidate, whether, Shabarimala agitation, all these things are, a lot of us who grew up there, in the 70s and 80s. We never thought that such things will happen in Kerala, but it is happening. So in that way, both the brothers have, through their films have, uh, I'll say, capsule the entire liberal mind of Kerala and its issues with what is happening around. Whether in personal life, the moral policing part of it, the political policing part of it, and interpersonal relationship, which are affected by very many factors, uh, and also the politics. The politics of power politics, whether it is left or right or whichever party it is become. They run the politics only for gaining power and holding on to it. So all of it, they have bought it very. I thought they have bought it very, very clearly and very forcefully. And as uh, Sarish has said that the film ends with a hope of Tagore's poem being recited and all. And that too, that structure where you see in Trivandrum Center, it's what you call Matrius column, where all the major political movements are began or ends there. That's the way it's a sacred political place for Kerala. So they have end the film there, which means that it's also a very strong political statement against uh, what is happening around us in terms of the crumbing of freedom of opinion, debate, liberal values, all of it. I think that's what I thought. It's very few films. I have not seen any film like this in other Indian languages. I don't know whether I have missed something. So that's what I thought. It has a contemporary value in terms of capsuling. I personally feels that great films and good filmmakers capsule their time. The issues of their time. And this is one film which both the brothers have together capsuled it so intimately, various issues, whether it is caste, the interpersonal relationship, the political things, the all of it. They have capsuled it very well, and I I I feel this is one of their best films they have made. I think they've been making films every year. I really envy them for doing that. They have made a structure where all other independent filmmakers are struggling to make one film, maybe in 1 or 2 years, but they are making films every year, and it gets to shown in at least in some places. So I think we need filmmakers like them to come and keep that space going. And they have an illustrious, their uncle was one of the key assistants of G. Aravindan, and he himself has made 2 or 3 films before he passed away. And so I'm happy that they're continuing that tradition in the family itself, that too independently, without, I don't think they're following their uncle's path, but they have made their own, I'll say, narrow path in the film space, and I wish them all the best.
Thank you for that. I think Hasna has also unmuted themselves. Would you like to say something? Okay, probably not. Uh, uh, Thank you so much, Cherian sir, for what you said. Maybe if the filmmakers, either of you would like to also talk about the censorship thing that came up, because it ties in with what sir was saying. Would you like to talk about that at this point?
Yeah, we could do. Can you hear me? Have I unmuted?
Yes, you have.
Yes. Yeah. The thing is, I mean, right from when we started thinking about this film, we knew we were going to have trouble with the censor board.
Yeah.
It's definitely a censor board. Also, although it is called as Central Board of Certification. That's all just stamp. They are there to censor, and we have had experiences before this. So we knew there was going to be trouble, and it was true. So they wanted us to chop up several words, particularly like saffronization, beef eating, beef eater, and things like that, several words like that. So, and then we were sure that we were not going to do that because it is part of the reality that is around us and we had to fight for it. So we, even before we actually got into it, we had contacted our lawyer and we had everything worked out about how to go to the court and all that and when to do it and all. But fortunately, before we could actually go to the court, we had to do this. There's an appellate tribunal for the CBFC where we can appeal. So we did that, but we didn't think it would actually come through. But somehow they let it pass. And so we didn't have to go to the court, although we were actually ready to do that. So that is how it came out without any cuts. They did not recommend any cuts. They said we could go without any cuts.
Oh, wow.
So it somehow, I suppose we were a little lucky, I think. We didn't have to go to the court to actually fight it out. In our first film, we actually had to go to the court to fight it out. And it was difficult to get the censorship, the certification, but finally we did. So although we were prepared, we didn't have to.
Oh, wow. But
So
it's
that is what
always
happened.
something, but it's always something that both of you are considering and thinking about.
Yes, because this always there at the back of our minds. Because this always happens when you try to say things openly. So you run into this trouble. It's there because the institution itself, although it's named certification, they are there to censor. In fact, we knew that because when we had screened the film at the CBFC, and they kept, there were 3 or 4 people viewing it. They kept saying that you have to chop off this, you have to chop off that, and all words basically.
Yeah.
So we told them, these are just words, and these are words which are used every day, like saffronization, beef eaters, all everyday words which people are anyway talking about. So we will definitely appeal and we'll get through. So there is no need to waste our time and yours. But they were quite adamant. So we had to appeal and get it, and we were lucky.
Anyone else who would like to come in at this point? One second, just maybe Fabienne, do you have anything to say?
Can I add something to this?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah. Actually, when we went to the censor board with this film, we had a bigger responsibility, metaphorically, which is Ramdas was bold and courageous in saying whatever he said, the character, and he was dead. They killed him, he was dead. So he could not have gone to the censor board, and it was our moral responsibility to go there for him. So actually, it was good fun being in that room. Though Santosh didn't mention it, but we were there. We faced the same kind of attitude, which Ramdas was in a much lesser way, of course.
Right.
But actually, those people there were deeply offended by the film. They were vibrating with anger, and they were telling us to chop that and chop this and all that. So it was good fun to sit there and tell them that that is not possible, and we would not cut. And we also asked them. We had the good opportunity to ask them, "Have you heard about our first film? Have you heard that we went to the court? And have you heard that we defeated you guys? So we are going to do the same with you. So please be careful when you tell us to cut, because we don't plan to do any such cutting." If you look, you might have seen, we told them, that we have named you guys by party. We have named everybody by, just like we would speak in normal life. The BJP is there, the Congress is there. Nobody is spared. Everybody is being spoken of. CPIM. So they asked us to cut CPIM from it. We said, is there no such party? There is a party. And they asked us to cut off saffronization. We said, is there no such thing happening here? It is a part of the regular discourse. This was happening in 2019. Now, not so much, but in those days.
Yeah.
So that was a fight, and it was good.
Yeah.
So that is how it went.
Yeah, in fact, even in the film, you reference this, right? Where Professor Ramdas is being told by, his young comrade that find a way to talk about it indirectly, and
Exactly.
So I think that anybody who's watching that would get that.
Yeah.
So I can totally imagine that they were vibrating with anger. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's good. I think there's one more question that has come in the chat from David Rees. Would you like to speak and ask your question? I don't. David Rees, would you like to ask your question yourself?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we're able to hear you.
Yes, I wondered, excuse me for not knowing the background. I wondered if Professor Ramdas was himself an actual person or whether the character was created as a composite of several real people who had been silenced in that sort of way. I assume he's not pure fiction.
Yeah.
Hello? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, hello, Mr. Rees. Hi. No, he's not modeled on any one particular person, but he's modeled on many people who have tried to fight the system and who had to, sacrifice their lives for it. We see many here, and like somebody else was saying, like Mr. Ramdas himself keeps saying that it's not going to happen in Kerala. But Kerala is no more as safe as it used to be, because the right wing has very long arms. And so it's not impossible here. That's also one of the things we wanted to say in the film. You're not safe anywhere. So I suppose that answers your question.
Okay.
And could I add another thing to this? just like Grishma rightly pointed out, we were dealing with darkness at least two levels. The two levels were the uppermost in our minds, actually. One is the darkness that the socio-political darkness that's around us. And then there's a darkness of loneliness and pain inside Professor Ramdas. So the meditative part of the film, where he's alone or he's thinking or things like that, they are the other half of the film, which is not spoken of so much, which we have sort of muted a little bit. And Ramdas himself is a bunch of contradictions, actually. Although he fights courageously, he is also afraid. That's quite obvious by the way he speaks to the editor. He calls him and tells him that I got a threat call from these goons. If he was not afraid, he wouldn't do that. So we wanted to get a well-rounded picture of to get a well-rounded character. The man is not entirely fearless. He has fears. He has internal struggles, conflicts, and we tried to bring that out in various scenes. Actually, the conflicts with his son, and old wounds that have remained inside him, which makes him do things that he does now, and all that kind of things. It's darkness outside and inside, and someone trying to manage both at the same time.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely. I
the
think
second part is also important, but maybe not. And at that point in time, in 2018, when we made the end of 2018, I think, when we made this film, or beginning of 2019, now I don't remember exactly, we felt that we had to make a statement, some political statement, because usually we don't make such overt political statements in our films. Our films are mostly about existential issues, about finding happiness and inner struggle and, existential issues, basically. And this film is obviously, it is more outwardly and it's more addressing issues that are around us more than inside us. So we decided that we had to make a statement as artists and as human beings who are living here. We had to speak out. And that is why we actually made this film. But of course, we couldn't leave the other aspect of our lives, which is the interiority. We had to maintain that also. And that is how we worked in this fashion, actually.
Yeah. If I come in,
Yes.
I think the film was made after the killing of Gauri Lankesh and Professor Kulbergi. I think
Yes.
Yeah. So that's one to answer David's question. Because there are two people, and that shocked the entire liberal mind across India. And I must add that this film is, though based in Kerala, it's not about entirely Kerala politics. They both the brothers being they worked and educated outside Kerala. They have imbibed, I'll say, the Indian situation much better than most of the other political films in Kerala which is being made, because they have a kind of all India view about what's happening around. So they are responding to, I'll say, Gauri Lankesh's killing as well as Kulbergi's killing and what is happening in Delhi, and the whole saffronization, beef, all of it comes together, which is even for a Malayalam film, it's very unique. All of it, getting integrated into the storyline and all of it. He says that there's no professor has been killed in Kerala. That's fine, but they know that it can happen anytime, just the way it happened in Karnataka or in Maharashtra, for that matter. Thanks.
Yeah. Yes. Soumya, would you like to speak?
Yeah, Pranya.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Actually, this question is for the respected directors. The movie involves the theme of dissent in two ways. Firstly, we have a character who is a dissenter, who speaks from the position of empathy, courage, and fearlessness. And also, in the second level, there is the real life experience of making a movie which deals with dissent. So, like, its take on the theme of dissent is like a double, it's manifold. So, and there is this character in the movie, Alex, who suggests to the professor Ramdas, how about trying it in a veiled manner, masking the dissent in another way and passing it off in something. So I'd be interested to know how about this possibility. If the movie had fictionalized some of the names instead of taking the real party names or real issues, would the movie have evoked the same kind of response as it has evoked when it dealt with the real things? I'm just curious to know the answer. Thank you.
Shall I go at it, Satish?
Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's an important question. The thing is that if we had veiled our narration, the narrative of the film, then we would be doing what Alex is suggesting, you know. So we decided that that cannot be done. Just like Ramdas refused to veil his thoughts, his ideas, we also decided that we had to actually go out and name the people who were being addressed, you know. And of course, being filmmakers in Kerala, we were a little protected because I mean it's not like making the same film in UP or one of the northern states in the Hindi belt. We are a little more protected in Kerala. I mean the courage needed is not as much as it would be. I mean if we were living in the north. Still, I mean we had decided that I mean we shouldn't hold back the punches. We had to deliver whatever had to be said. So that is a choice we consciously made. And we knew we would run into trouble with the censors. And that is obvious, like I explained previously. So we felt that there was no other way of going about it. So that is why we chose that line.
All right. I'm sure more people have questions and comments. I'll just go around and
May I?
yes, please.
Hello. Thank you so much, Santosh Babusen and Satish Babusen, for making such a brilliant film. I watched that film. I mean, beyond the politics, the way you have, um, come up with, you have used the camera. Though it is titled "Irit," I mean the theme of darkness pervades throughout the film, even as visual images, which I found was very interesting. And moreover, when I after watching this film, somehow I had a feeling that it had stuck with this left-right binary. But when I rewatched it again, I mean there are more even more complexities that the film has addressed. Even though the film is very vocal about the right wing extremism, the film also makes a subtle criticism on the so-called backline, the socio-cultural space of Kerala. So I was very curious why it has been set in Kerala. When I was watching in the initial phase, I was thinking why it was set in Kerala. But the film is in that way very multi-layered, complicated narrative which has brought into the forefront. And moreover, I was thinking what I mean, the question of caste. Though you have addressed in some way, I was also thinking what would have been if the central character would have been a woman, it would have been a Dalit woman. There are, you have addressed multiple levels of complexities. Though I'm very political, wonderful film. Thank you.
Thank you, Suraj. Maybe I could, by way of explanation, I could add something to that. That is, we have been in subtle ways critical of the left also. Can you hear me?
Yes, we're able to hear you.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, I can hear.
Yeah, we have been like you. Maybe you remember the scene where the old man comes with his daughter-in-law and grandson, seeking justice from the left party. They are supposed to do something for him, and nothing happens. He's running from pillar to post with no result at all. So these things happen. So the left, in a certain sense, it's able to stand up to the push from the right, but it's not perfect. So there are problems. We are facing problems from the left and the right, but mostly right now the problems are mostly from the right, from the right, and they could be very long-lasting problems. So that is why we have focused more on that side, but nobody is completely clean, and we have tried to say that, although not in so many words.
Yeah. So, anyone else? MS Murli Krishna, maybe? Paniraj K. Nagar Gere
Can I
Ramesh.
add one more thing?
Please,
Which,
please do.
yeah, that's because the caste discrimination in Kerala is slightly different from. We have lived in Karnataka and Bombay and all that.
Yeah.
It's quite different because in Kerala it's not as overt as you would find it in the other states in India. It's very covert. So nobody actually talks about it, but you know it is there. It's somewhere there at the back of their minds. But they don't have, because of the social changes that have happened here. It's very difficult for someone to overtly insult a man by his caste, and it rarely happens in Kerala. But it is still there. The bugbear is there, but I mean, it never shows up openly. So it is difficult to make a film which is about caste in Kerala and show those things, because it's very subtle. It's not like in the other states, and at least the places where I have lived or visited. It's not as overt as in those places. It's very subtle. But something that we have shown in that the scene that Ramdas narrates could have happened in Kerala only some 50 years ago. It can never happen here now. It's very, very difficult because people won't have the guts to actually say something like this. But that doesn't mean that we have got over it, but it has just gone underground. That is the reality.
That's
I'd
very.
like, sorry, go on.
No,
Pratya.
please. No, just that's very interesting because I'm not very familiar with the politics of Kerala. So that, I mean, that this whole caste, that it's not spoken about, but it exists and it's different from the way it happens in other states. It's interesting to know that.
Yeah,
So
most
please
people
continue.
wouldn't know that.
Yeah.
It's very subtle actually here. It is there, but entitlement and all that is there in the minds of people, but it's rather subtle, and it would be extremely unfashionable for anyone to mention it out in the open, but it is there. So that has not been washed away. And we've come a long way. If you look at what proverbially Vivekananda said about Kerala being a madhouse of caste. So we've come a long way after that, but still it is there. I'd like to add a small anecdote here to react to what Suraj was mentioning about the left and the right. You see, two film festivals in India which usually screen our films. One is the International Film Festival of Kerala. The other is the Calcutta Film Festival, the International Film Festival of Kolkata. This particular film, we sent it to both festivals, and neither festival selected the film. And do you know, the funny thing is, later we heard from people in the know that in Calcutta, they didn't take the film because they thought this was too leftist. After what happened in Calcutta, and in those days, where CPM was taboo. So they said that this film is too leftist. So it was not taken. And in Kerala, we heard that this film is not leftist enough. So they didn't take it. Because there was Kabir, and there was the Buddha, and there was music, and a lot of things happened. So that's an anecdote.
Interesting. Yeah. So, I mean, really, you did manage to have a very complex layered plot in that. Okay. Would anyone else like to comment, have a question? Professor Tarakeshwar?
I have nothing much to add. I agree with Suraj that it is much more complex. As even the producer said, it is not a documentary on any one person. And locating it in the Kerala context was quite interesting. As the discussion now is revealing, it is anticipating certain changes in the Kerala polity. And as they rightly pointed out, the recent victory in the Lok Sabha elections for BJP was seat, that too in the northern part of Kerala, is really something that is puzzling. I don't know whether anybody has taken it seriously and analyzed why it is happening and what is happening there. And so in that sense, it was quite interesting. And here, as there is caste, there is also a gender, and there is also a hope. In spite of this Bengal and then the Kerala thing, this journalist coming down, and then this boy helping her, and then some kind of relationship that is brewing between the two, though he gets disappointed at the end. But that was also quite interesting. And this Sagao culture and then their attitude and people coming to there and then telling them their problems and the way they take it. There is a subtle remark on the left too. I thought that is quite interesting. It is not making overt judgments, but it's making subtle remarks. So in that sense, it was quite interesting for me. Thank you. Thank you, Cherian, for suggesting the film. And thanks to the filmmakers who are here and also the Grishma for introducing the film today. Thank you.
Welcome, sir.
I'm just saying if anyone else has any, sometimes it takes people, some time to kind of go through whatever. And a lot of questions and comments come up as the discussion progresses. So we'll just see.
I also wanted to ask a question. Something that I mentioned in my presentation also, this image of Buddha that comes up in the film more often. The name of the house is also Lumbini. So as I was saying, does it have any parallel to, the darkness and how Buddha was an enlightened being and he saw through the darkness of human life? And there is also a kind of a small parallel between Buddha and Ram Das in the sense that he has a lot of disciples and acquaintances, but his family is estranged. So I wanted to ask, what is the significance of the Buddha imagery in the film?
Yeah. The thing is that there are two things. One is that the film was shot entirely in our house. This Lumbini is our house, actually. And that's the name of our house. But I mean, we could always have removed the board and used something else. No, but we used it with a purpose because we showed the Buddha also. We wanted to. Basically, because like I was telling earlier, Buddha and that part of the film deals with the interior darkness of the individual. He's trying to find some light. He's looking for light, and he's listening to music, listening to poetry. He does all that. And in some ways, his responses to the outside also, the struggles, the dissent, is also an attempt to dispel the darkness, which he experiences inside him. The love affair he talks about is also connected to the darkness, because he clearly says, Naina, her name is Naina, she could see into my darkness, the darkness inside me. And that is what attracted him most to her. So it is part of that inner darkness which he is trying to address. And the Buddha and all that are part of that part of his life. He's trying to find some solace in all of that, getting everything together and continuing with the fight outside while he's also going along a path where there is a lot of internal fight inside him. That is why we use this Buddha. And the fish also, to some extent, we were using it along those lines, as a symbol of compassion and things that lie deep inside, in the depths, So those were the motives actually. But of course, finally, it's the viewer who decides what means what.
Thank you.
I think someone had unmuted. Was there a question?
This is Sanjay here.
Yes, please.
Actually, I was very happy that you brought to the fore the ideas of Tagore in this context, which is very important because quite often when we discuss Tagore, when we talk about his poetry and his Nobel Prize and Gitanjali, but what is very important is that particularly at this moment to read his essays, Tagore's essays. So one of the essays from which, I mean, most of the ideas are taken in this film, that is the nationalism in India. In fact, it was published in the form of essays, but initially it was a lecture delivered to the US citizens. Nationalism in Japan was another one. This one is nationalism in India. And it was at the time of 1915 when the World War I was going on. So Tagore reflected on the question of nationalism, though he had already done that through his other books. But there in this lecture, he mentions explicitly, and this lecture starts like this: our real problem in India is not political, it is social. These are the first two lines of this essay of Tagore called Nationalism in India. In fact, it was republished by Penguin and with an introduction by Ramchandra Guha. So there were certain reasons for which Tagore wanted to present a critique of nationalism. First of all, it was that there is self-love. Self-love is detested, he says that pride in every form breeds blindness at the end. And he also says that we have been taught in our childhood that a country is greater than the ideals of humanity. So in this film also, Professor Ramdas uses this. There is this question of patriotism, whether you call it patriotism or nationalism, and then the ideals of humanity. So ideals of humanity are greater than any piece of land or any self-love or pride in one's own country. And this is something which has been critiqued by several writers. In fact, one of the first names comes to mind is Dr. Johnson. Patriotism is the refuse of scoundrels. So there must have been some reasons for which people like Emma Goldman, Leo Tolstoy, Virginia Woolf wrote 3 Guineas in order to present a critique after World War I. Emma Goldman writing Patriotism, a Menace to Liberty. Leo Tolstoy writing Patriotism or Peace, Patriotism or Peace. So which is the right choice, okay, 1896. And then he wrote another one, Patriotism and Government in 1900. So it is very important to know some of these ideas and reflect upon them. So Tagore was an internationalist. So he thought beyond the national boundaries. His thoughts were not limited to the boundaries of a nation. So these are the ideas, I think, which must be read, discussed, and reflected upon. So I'm happy that this film, your film, brings to the fore these ideas. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sanjay.
Yeah, I think which is why how the film ends with that poem also,
Yes.
kind of just reinforces that idea. Okay, do we have any more questions or comments? Okay, I think if we can wait for like 2 minutes and see if someone else wants to come in at this point. So the film was shot entirely in your house. I mean, that's
They have mostly.
yeah, that's I mean mostly, but it's still so.
I was just thinking, I mean, about the actor Kalatharan. I think his name is Kalatharan.
Yes, yes.
But I'm really how the complexities of the protagonist is very brilliantly being acted out by that by Kalatharan. And, I found him very fascinating. Just as I felt so, I just thought of communicating.
Thank you.
The selection in that sense was very brilliant.
Thanks. He has been there in many of our films, actually, like most of our films. He's a brilliant actor. He
Okay.
works. We also find very comfortable working with him. And a very good actor, actually.
Okay. All right. I think if there's no one else who has any questions at this point, we should wrap up.
Maybe if Santosh and Satish have, something more to
Yes,
add,
of course. Absolutely.
we would love to hear them.
Yes, absolutely.
Nothing in particular, really. We have spoken our minds. Maybe we could say this is not particularly representative of our filmography. Like I told you, our films are mostly about existential issues and about the internal world. And this is actually an outlier. Maybe that's all I can say. The rest of the 9 films are quite different. But this is also very close to our heart because we wanted to make a statement and I think we did. So that's just about it. And maybe I would also add, since Suraj spoke about Kaladharan, actually for one of our previous films, which Mr. V.K. Cherian spoke about, the film called The Narrow Path, he won the Best Actor at the International Film, in the Indian International Film Festival at New York for that film, for his performance in that one. So he's a very good actor.
Pradnya, I have a question for them, if it's okay.
Yes, please.
Yeah, so it's not very usual to have two people, sharing honors as directors. How do you go about making the film? Is there a division of labor? Is there a way in which you decide that the creative part or some part is one person's and another part is another person's? Is that how you go about it? And also this idea of the indie or the independent filmmaker, which is everywhere in the last decade, we have seen virtually in so many different languages. So I was just wondering if you would like to talk about Would that be a self-description? Would you call yourselves as independent filmmakers? How do you see yourselves? So maybe these two aspects, if both of you can throw a little bit of light on. Thanks.
I think I'll let Satish talk because I've been doing too much of the talking.
That's okay. Independent, yes. We would, if we at all should describe ourselves, we are independent filmmakers because we work totally away from the mainstream. There is space for everything in this world, which is what I feel. And there is space for the mainstream, but it's not for me. Great, but no thank you kind of thing. That's how I look at it. So we work away from the mainstream. We don't consider the requirements of the mainstream or what they call the industry. We just go, we look at the two of us, brothers, we look at film purely, solely as art. This is the only film where we have actually critiqued the social issues which are, the atmosphere around us, the context around us. But we merely always look at cinema as just art, inspired by the literature, the music, the paintings, the sculptures that we have seen, read, listened to, and all that. So we look at it as just as art. And so that itself makes us independent because we have really no place within the what they call the industry. And when we work,
can I add something to that?
Yeah, sure.
Because, we are independent in a very stoic way. Because even in independent cinema, we belong to a very narrow stream of, like Satish said, film as art, So that's a very, very narrow path that we are treading, actually. Very few viewers. Because, we don't deal mostly, we don't deal with social issues or things like that. We are mostly talking about existential issues and things that concern us, basically. So, we have very small audiences and our, distribution lines are also very small. So that is, independent in a very, very micro way. Even in the independent stream, we belong to a very narrow path, I would say. Yeah, Satish, please continue.
Yeah. Independent, so independent that I've forgotten what I was going to say.
And I think
they were asking about,
you must speak about the cinema sanctum, which you have started, initiated.
I could do
That's
that,
a very
yes.
interesting concept, So,
yeah. In fact, we noticed, 10 years back when we started making our films, we were asked a question at the International Film Festival where we reviewed our film. We were asked, so what is your next step? Will you be working with mainstream actors and when are you going to do a mainstream film next? And that shocked us because Santosh and I, we had come into filmmaking because of our love of cinema as art. Personally, I cannot stand the mainstream, and I personally cannot also stand what is called prestige cinema these days, which is what gets shown about at the big film festivals like Berlin, Venice, Cannes, and all that. Now those festivals are all about the red carpet, about deals being signed, about Netflix. That is not cinema. That is just commerce. It has no place for me, and I think cinema like that has no place in cinema as art. If you just look at a Berlin winner from say 15 years ago, or a Venice Film Festival winner, you would be watching a Bergman or a Tarkovsky or a Perezhanov or a Roy Anderson or something like that. Okay, do you remember who won the Berlin Film Festival last year, or even this year, or the year before that, or the Cannes Festival winners of the last 3 years? It is all disposable, unimportant things which are there merely for the commerce. people gather there. There was a time when, during film festivals, people who loved cinema as art, just like we love literature and paintings and all that, they would get together. We would all get together and we'd discuss it with so much passion. But now, what are the discussions? How many people were there to watch it? Did it sell on Netflix? Who has picked it up? Do you have a sales agent? Nowadays, when you apply your film to a film festival, a big film festival, this is one of the questions. Who is your sales agent? But that's not the way to approach art. So recently, I've begun a movement. It's a project which is very close to my heart. And thank you, VK, for asking me about this. I did not mean to speak about it here because it's a different context. But I'm working on a project called the Cinema Sanctum. And my dream, there are people who are joining me. It's called the Cinema Sanctum. If everybody's interested, you can check out the cinemasanctum.org. What our plan, the hope is that within the large, the great galleries of the world, cinema should also find a place. Because when it began, photography was also dismissed as not art. But photography has come in. So you have paintings, you have sculpture, you have music. There are conservatories, there are music halls which consider music as art. But why not? Cinema was once like that. Where is Tarkovsky now? People are forgetting. In film schools abroad, nobody teaches Tarkovsky. Nobody shows them Parasjanov or Bergman. He's gone. He is dead, gone, buried. So I and some others with me, we are hoping that cinema should be brought back to that kind of cinema, not the red carpet, Netflix signing of deals, but that other kind of cinema should be brought out, so that then people can really go back to discussing cinema as art. It's very personal for me because I cannot stand the other thing. And I'm sure there are lots of people like me who can't stand the other thing, and we have to start somewhere. I've started this thing called the Cinema Sanctum, and many people are joining me, and I'm working hard on this.
Great. That's great to know. I think Nicola ma'am has shared the link in the chat, so everybody can go and check it out.
Oh, thank you, Nikhil. Thanks, yes.
And also, I was asking you about how it is to make films together.
Yeah. That's because my brother and I, we have this common uncle, our mother's brother called Padma Kumar. He made art films, totally, artistic movies. At the time, it was possible. There were people doing it. Aravindan and Adur and all were doing that, and he also did that. But the main thing about that was he was committed to that kind of film, and he would not make another. And that was an inspiration for us when we started making films ourselves. So when we came into this, because of our love for cinema as art, it was very simple because both of us shared that love. It was a shared love. And there was also the question of philosophical, psychological and philosophical explorations, which my brother and I, had been going through together. We had a group of friends and we were discussing these things, existential issues and all that. So those shared ideas, values, concepts, whatever you want to call them, are what we are dealing with in our cinema also. So it's a shared vision. So there was no problem working together. It was the obvious thing to do. And how we go about it, we go about it exactly together, planning the film, writing the script and all that. The only point where we actually divide our duties is when we're actually shooting. That is when, as directors, we sit with we sit at the monitors. Our associates and assistants would actually be there, right next to the action. We'd watch from here, and Santosh would take care of the visuals. He would be the DOP of the film. He would take care of the visuals, and I would be looking out for the acting, the performance. That's the only place where we divide and then take care of these two aspects, because these two are finally very important when it comes to it. And we depend on our associates, our team, who have been with us with all these 10 films. So they are a great help. So they know exactly what we want, and they will also help us with that. That's how we work.
Wonderful. It sounds like a seamless kind of process. That's
Big
nice.
support team, actually.
Yeah. Any closing or last comments, thoughts, questions?
Yeah. I'd like to thank VK Cherian and all of you for actually featuring your film in this discussion, and for all of you who took the trouble of watching the film and thinking about it, commenting about it. Thank you.
Exactly. I'd like to add that also. Vikacharian, Nikhila, Navpratnya, and Grishma for having studied the films so thoroughly, and to all of you for having sat and watched the films. I would like to mention here, like you said about the kind of film, our audience also, because over the years, over these 10 films, around the sixth film, seventh film, I think we realized that our audiences, our viewers were falling, the numbers were falling. And that really was no concern, not much of a concern for us, because we are trying to say something what we feel is very significant. Naturally, the numbers would fall. And now what we realize is our viewership is basically other filmmakers and artists, poets and people like that. And when we have a screening and there would be a Q&A after, it is these people who are there. People would get up and say, I'm a writer and I'd like to ask, or somebody would say, I'm a filmmaker. Someone would say, I'm a musician. And that is really something. We feel that, okay, cinema is art and other artists are listening to it. And now, thank you for giving us this opportunity, because we are really, really speaking to the intelligentsia of the country. People who understand cinema, who look at it as art, just like we look at literature. Literature has been such an influence. If I remember this point you made about the inner darkness. See, when I think about someone looking at the inner darkness, I was discussing this with Santosh when we wrote that line about Nayana, the eyes. When Ramdas is speaking about that girl, he says a line there. He says, she's not very beautiful. And the next line he says is that she could see into the darkness of my soul. Now, there is a connotation. Nobody would know about this, but I'm just saying it because you're all people who can understand this. When Tolstoy wrote Anna Karenina, we all know that Anna Karenina was a very beautiful woman. At least that's what we assume. I mean, it received knowledge. Anna Karenina, a very beautiful woman. But in that whole book, Tolstoy never once describes the beauty of Anna Karenina, except a single line somewhere where he says, she had green eyes and could see in the dark like a cat. That is all he says. The echo in our film, she was not very pretty, but she could see into the darkness of my soul. And now I like that. That is the kind of cinema that we are talking about.
That's beautiful. Actually, we should be thanking you for, providing us the link to your film and letting us watch it and, and being present here, and participating in the discussion. It's very interesting to hear your thoughts, not just on the film, but also, the filmmaking process and, exactly what is going into the film when you're making it. So thank you so much for your time. I would also like to, on behalf of TFO, thank VK Cherian once again for suggesting the film, and Grishma, of course, for initiating the discussion and taking it forward in the direction that it went in, and everybody for coming in and participating and spending your Saturday evening with us. We will convene again next Saturday with another film. Okay. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good night.
Thanks,
See you
Grishma,
next
particularly.
Saturday.
Good night, sir.
Thank
Thank you.
you,
Thank
Satish,
you.
Thank
Santosh,
you. Good night.
Yes, thank you.
See you
Thank
next
you.
week.
Good night, Professor.
Grishma, Pradnya, thank you.
Not at all. See you soon. Good night.